Hey everybody, welcome to Burra Tech. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the game I made for my kids, and I'm also going to be talking about all the things that I did right and all the pitfalls that I experienced along the way. Alright, before we start this video, I want you to like and subscribe to this channel. And if you really like this video, or you know someone that needs to make an app for their kids, I want you to share this video with them. Today's featured course is Coding for Parents. Learn to make games and apps for your kids. Get to learn amazing development environments such as Unity, Construct 3, Python, and you'll even get to learn machine learning. This is the #1 course that you need to have if you want to make games for your kids. Remember, this course doesn't cost money, it makes money because you can upload the games that you make for your kids to the App Store so tens of thousands of other kids can as well. So I've been making games for years, and when I had kids, I basically said to myself, yeah, I can make games for them as well depending on what their needs are. Now, not everybody can do this, and that's why I put out this featured course. So as a result, I made a game for my toddler, and it's called Flappy Learn Preschool. So chances are, if you don't have kids, you've never played kids games before, and you'll realize as soon as you start to download a few of them that they're completely different from the rest of the App Store and the rest of the games that are currently being produced. The #1 reason why they're different is because games that adults and teenagers consume usually have big scopes and big budgets, whereas kids games do not have that big scope or big budget. And there's a very good reason for this. First of all, as adults and teenagers, you expect a lot from your games. You expect the games to have a certain amount of functionality, playability, and they need to be a certain size. Whereas kids don't really care that much, and their limited scope of the world is very small, so you're allowed to make a smaller scope game. Now, I'm not saying that adults only require big scope games. In fact, there's a lot of indie games out there that are small scope that are absolutely amazing. I'm just saying that generally people want bigger scope games when they're older. They might want a big bang for the buck, or they might even want to use the freemium model. Now, freemium model for kids is a whole different thing. We'll be talking about that later. So another thing that becomes completely apparent when you become a parent is that games are made for specific age groups. Now, if your game age group is too low, your kid's probably going to get bored, and if it's too high, they're probably going to get frustrated. And of course, the scope that kids can play is completely all over the map, but you have to get it right. So making a game for a 10-year-old versus a 2-year-old is going to be a completely different experience because 10 and 2 are completely different. Now, there's some overlap. Making a game for a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old might have some similarities, but essentially you want to nail down your age group to 2 to 3 years. If you can do this effectively, your game will be very well received. It also helps if you know kids or have kids to test your game with, which is the case that I had. I tested my game and I found out there were many things that worked and many things that didn't work. In fact, the things that I thought would work actually didn't work out very well, and the things that didn't work I thought would work out really well. So you never know what will happen until you get your game or app into the tester's hands, and more specifically into the right tester's hands in the right age group. So let's take a look at the game that I made for my toddler. The game is called Flappy Learn Preschool, and once you interact with objects, you'll see the word printed on the screen, and the sound of the word will come out of the speakers. Now again, I have many years of design and development experience, and I'm going to go through the choices that I made for the specific age group that I am targeting. So if you look at the gameplay, the mechanics are similar to Flappy Bird. Now they're not exactly the same because I tried to make them exactly the same as Flappy Bird, but when I tested it, it didn't work out very well. So what I had to do was modify it for the age group. And this is one big tip that I have for any aspiring developer. It doesn't matter if you're making kids games or not. You have to find a way to make your game feel organic in the tester's hands. In this case, it wasn't working out very well and my kid got a little frustrated, so I changed it. And you'll notice that the mechanic of moving is not the same. And the reason is that I tested it and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Now, another thing that I noticed that kids games do is they allow the kid to choose a character, and there are a lot of different characters. In Flappy Learn Preschool, we did a lot. Now, you don't have to have this many if you want to make a game for your kid, but you should probably have a few. The reason is that choosing a character makes the experience better. And if you can make your characters a little bit more oddball or something that's not exactly standard, that is a good thing. For example, my favorite character is the flying pig. So one of the things you have to be incredibly cognizant of is the animations that you put in your game. Animations are usually really expensive. Now, they're not expensive in money, they're expensive in time. And most of us are used to looking at big budget movies with $100 million budgets. Now, if you have $100 or $200 million at your disposal, chances are the animations are going to be amazing. So if you're making a game in your spare time, you will not be able to compete with this. So you want to find as many shortcuts to the animation as possible. Now, if you look at the animations in Flappy Learn Preschool, they're fairly simple, but they get the job done. We'll be talking about art and aesthetics later, and this is a great time to talk about the game scope. Now, over the years, I've made a lot of games and I've seen a lot of games fail. And these are not just games from other people, but they're my own personal games. Now, the number one thing that can absolutely tank a game is to make your game scope too big, or to be constantly adding to the scope. If you've watched a lot of Buratech videos, you'll understand that I talk about this a lot. So generally, when you make a game, and especially if it's your first game, you want to reduce the scope as much as humanly possible. The reason is that even if you reduce your scope, it will probably be much harder to get that game out the door than you think it is. And this is a lesson that is best learned when you have 1, 2, or 10 games that have failed because of this reason. Generally, the scope of your game should be as small as possible. The scope of Flappy Learn Preschool is very small, but it is effective. And as a developer, you want to be thinking about how to make your game or app effective and not big. There's a huge difference between that line of thinking. Just because your game is bigger and has more features doesn't mean it's going to be better. On another note, since this game is educational, you want to maximize the educational value of the game. It's not about features, it's about maximizing the effect of the game. This is the number one tip that I hope you walk away from in this video. So even this simple game took me, an experienced developer, longer to make than I originally expected. And even when I finished the game, there were still a few bugs that I had to iron out. And these bugs are mostly due to iPhone screen sizes. So if you're working on your game in your spare time, make a small and simple, effective game. You'll thank me later once it reaches the App Store. So let's talk about the game itself and the content that's in it and the choices that I made to help my kid learn. Now, if you've ever been around toddlers, a lot of times they don't know what everything is because they're small and they're still learning and they can't really say things properly. My kid, as of this video, can't really say words properly, and that's why I made this game. So let's take a look at the game. The character interacts with an object, and when that object disappears, there's a little bit of a start explosion. Now, once that object disappears, the words are printed on the screen. Now, this is important because once the kid gets a little bit older and they understand letters, they'll be learning spelling as well. So not only do we have the object, which if you look at a lot of books and apps for kids, you'll see that just picking the object, like this is a scooter or this is a turnip, that is a whole game in itself. So I decided to take the Flappy Bird mechanics and apply it to those kinds of games. And most importantly, when the printed words come up on the screen, the right pronunciation of the word is put through the speakers. This is important because when kids are developing speech, they don't understand how to do it yet. And if they hear it over and over again, they'll figure out the best way to do it. Now, on that note, I also do have some functionality to turn off the background music and to turn off the sound effects, because as a kid's game, you need to have this because sound effects can be really annoying to parents sometimes. So I always recommend to have an option to turn off sound effects and to turn off the background music. So for this particular app, I decided to make 6 levels with 6 different kinds of objects. And I think this is plenty because the kids can choose which objects they like. Now, the best part about this particular game is that if it's insanely successful, then I can start localizing this into other languages. And not only does it become a game for preschoolers, then the scope of the game is made for a larger target audience. They're for people that are learning different languages. Now, I'm not going to pay for localization if it's not a success. If it's not a success, you shouldn't double down on the production. If it is somewhat successful, then you want to double down on production, because if the game isn't successful, then I'll make another game and hopefully that one will be more successful. Of course, I have high hopes that this game is going to be insanely successful. And that's another tip that I have for you developers out there. You shouldn't localize into different languages unless you actually speak the language. The reason is that it's a lot lot of work to do, and it will delay your release date. Now, you want to get your game into as many hands as possible so that people can give you feedback. And you want people to enjoy your game. So by delaying that release date, both of those things won't happen. So let's talk about the art, and then we'll talk about the pricing. So the art is really simple, and it's done like that by design. So unless you watch a lot of kids movies or kids TV shows or read a lot of kids books, you'll notice that the art is all over the place. Some of it is insanely simple, some of it is actually not even that good, and other art is incredibly amazing. You'll have books that are meticulously painted and absolutely a joy to look at, and you'll have other books that are incredibly simple but effective, and then you'll have some books that just don't look very good at all, and you wonder how they even got to sell this in the first place. So the point with any kind of aesthetic is that if you adhere to your own rules, it will work out. And with kids games, you get a lot more leeway in this than, let's say, other games. And a lot of times when I look at portfolios from junior developers and junior game designers, I find that a lot of people don't adhere to their own aesthetic. They use different color schemes, they use completely different color themes, they also have art that doesn't quite fit. If you make an aesthetic value that fits together, your game will look good. So let's talk about the pricing. The freemium model on the App Store is probably one of the best ways to make money. In fact, all the top apps use the freemium model. However, when it comes to kids games, a lot of parents don't like their kids seeing ads. And parents are actually more likely to pay a little bit more money for an app that has no ads. Now, Flappy Learn Preschool has no freemium option, it's just a fixed price. Now, the price for this game is less than $1. So for the comfort of knowing that there are going to be no ads, there's going to be an upfront fee. And this is good for me as a developer because I get money right away. Now, a lot of parents will download their apps, but you know what? If you ever see your kid interact with some kind of app and they touch an ad, the kid will start crying because, well, they're not in the game anymore. So that's a very bad user experience. And personally, I think ads for kids games, especially young kids games, is a very bad user experience. So I think a lot of parents know this and they're willing to pay a few bucks for an app. So in conclusion, Flappy Learn Preschool is a simple game for toddlers. It is meticulously designed from a person who's had years of development experience. So I think the best thing about this game is that I personally got to make a game for my kid to suit her needs. Now, if you have an amazing app or game idea, now you can too. If you get Coding for Parents, learn to make games and apps for your kids. This is a bundle of courses where you get to learn Unity, Construct 3, Python, and machine learning. So you can make an app for your kid and upload it to the App Store so tens of thousands of other kids can do it as well. So if your kid has a learning disability, like dyslexia, like I have, then you can make an app for your kid to help them with that disability. And you can upload it to the App Store, and chances are tens of thousands of other kids will benefit from that app. It's a win-win-win situation. And you can do it all if you get the course Coding for Parents. If you want to take a look at some of our other courses, you can take a look at them for a discounted price down below. And I should also mention that Coding for Parents is on sale for a limited time, so buy it before the sale runs out. Now remember that every single dollar that we get from the courses that you buy below, we put into making more content. We don't do a Patreon on this channel. You can get lifetime access to the courses down below. So if you really want to help out the channel and you love subscriptions, you can subscribe to all of our content down below. You can either pay monthly, yearly, or you can get lifetime access to the school. Subscriptions are the best way to help with the channel, so please take a look at the links down below. You can buy Flappy Learn Preschool with the link down below. You can also gift this app for a kid that you know. Have you made an app for your kids? I would like to see a link down below. And if you have any comments, please put them down below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in another video.